Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. Today's episode is a pretty special one. Alex Gruskin joins me. We do a 23 years old and under ATP draft. A draft. So essentially, if we were in charge of putting together a tennis team, or we were, looking to have ownership stake in a player's future results, who would we take? Who would we want on our squad? No players who are 24 years old. It is 23 and under. Obviously, you have Carlos Alcaraz. You have Jannik Sinner. It's pretty straightforward. But after that, after those top two, it gets very, very interesting. So we actually excluded Alcaraz and Sinner from the draft. We kind of went from there. And after that, we went back and forth. And I think you are going to enjoy it. Even though it is a long one, I believe it is a good one. All right. Quick reminder that Monday Match Analysis is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. BetUS has 24/7 customer service, fastest payouts in the industry, great variety for this indoor hardcourt season upcoming. You can go to betus.com and use the promo code YouTube150 for a 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000. Please gamble responsibly and don't harass the players. Gruskin, this is a big deal. What we do on this show, it's going to have a legacy moving forward. Our misses, our hits, like you and I know that we're not going to let each other forget about this for a while.
I have been plugging this particular episode for 6 weeks on my podcast because this is a topic that I think becomes more prevalent after this 2024 season than perhaps it has ever been, given the fact Sinner, Alcaraz each captured 2 majors this year, and you're just already starting to wonder, oh man, is there anyone out there who can catch these two over the next decade? I'm very excited to have this conversation. When you threw out, let's do it as a draft, I was like, I've got a 43-man board, 7 tiers. Like, I'm glad that we're going to be graded on this moving forward as well. I'm very excited.
The suspense of who you're going to pick is big time. I'm also, though, I'm curious, like, if you're going to throw out a name here at some point and I'm going to be like, who, Gruskin? Like, this guy plays third singles on Stanford. What are you talking about?
Yeah, if you're telling me you don't have Timo Legout on your list of 28 guys or however many you came into, then yeah, you're probably just not prepared for this the way that I have prepared. I will say quickly, you talked about the nerves. I think the most difficult pick is the first pick because that's kind of the nuts on the table pick. That's kind of like, all right, because there's a lot of prospects you can make a case for at one, but if you have the first pick, and by the way, we probably should have decided who has the first pick beforehand. That's the toughest pick because you're going like, I'm gonna stake my claim on this.
Yeah, I'm confident in mine. Look, we're building teams here. We're gonna have rosters of 12 players each. Okay, we're gonna go 12 rounds. We're not going to do a snake draft like you suggested. That's way too confusing. We'll go back and forth.
Okay.
And then, we're going to have basically, if you're asking me, do I have like a type that I'm looking for that I think is the type that is going to succeed in the next decade of men's tennis? Yes, I do. But we'll have to discover that as we go. So again, 23 is the maximum age. As soon as you hit 24, you are ineligible for this draft. And I guess we picked 23 in part because Jannik Sinner is 23. And the question we're kind of trying to answer is who are the best prospects, even though they're not prospects anymore, right? That word implies that like, oh, they might make it. Sinner and Alcaraz are already there, but we're asking who younger and the same age as Sinner and Alcaraz are going to be the best after those two.
Yeah, if I may add to that, it's not a search for a big 3 because obviously we're coming off of the big 3 era. It's not that there's a guaranteed third guy who will be competing with them. It's who of this pack is most likely to catch them. Or is it going to be this dynamic where these two do run away with all these titles, as right now it feels like it might be? There's also the fact that 2024 feels like the first time the original next-gen crew, Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas, they've plateaued to a certain point. And so it's like, all right, who has upwards mobility remaining on the rankings, in the rankings? It's a fascinating question. I'm excited to see your draft board.
Yeah. And those guys you just mentioned, it's not that they aren't still really, really great. And in some
Yeah.
cases, like Zverev, he might be playing his best tennis ever, but he's not about to get way, way better all of a sudden.
Exactly. 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 We know who he is.
All right. So the Sinner Alcaraz thing, we don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I think Alcaraz is on my team, Sinner is on your team, just because that's how it was 3 years ago when they
Yeah.
were both. Is it 3 years ago now? We first had this
Roughly.
conversation. Yeah, so I don't think we can like deviate from that, but we talked recently actually, and we both agree like it's a really good debate at this point of who will have the better career. Slams are 4-2 Alcaraz at this moment, but I think there are tons of, great arguments that Yannick might have a better career. Like there's a sustainability to his mental game that is really, really significant. An unflappability. And I think we saw it, at this US Open with some of the, through some of the physical issues that may have been also brought on by some of the stuff happening in the background with Sinner that he's had to deal with. To come into that US Open and win it is was mightily impressive, but also to win the Australian Open and then to come back and win Rotterdam. I'm not saying Rotterdam's important. I'm saying to win your first major and then to be like, all right, back to work, no hangover. Like we're just back at it. That kind of thing is so impressive to me. I know I'm talking about Sinner where
Mm.
I think I'm taking Alcaraz on my team. But I guess the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want this to turn into a massive Alcaraz Sinner debate in the comments because I don't think that's, I think they're so close right now that it's really not worth fighting about.
The compliment to Sinner isn't that, oh, he's the clear better prospect than Alcaraz moving forward. The compliment is it's now a discussion. Like, I think that is the highest compliment you can offer him after 2024. And again, yeah, Alcaraz is a little bit younger. Alcaraz does have more major titles. I went back and looked at these stats because we're now 9 months into this season, and Yannick Sinner's won over 91% of his matches. Federer did that 3 times. Djokovic and Nadal did that twice in their careers, winning over 90% of their matches. And when we're talking all-time Pantheon Mount Rushmore seasons in ATP Tour history, you got to win at least 90% of your matches to get in that
Yeah.
conversation. You have to win multiple majors in the same year to get in that conversation. You got to lead the tour in top 20, top 10 victories. And like you got to kind of win more than 50% of the events you played. Sinner is flirting with or surpassing all of those benchmarks. And he's doing it at age 23. And to your point, and we're going to talk a lot of tennis mechanics today, the most amazing part about this debate is that none of us have discussions about their tennis anymore. Like we know how good Yannick Sinner is off both wings. We know the explosiveness Carlos Alcaraz can bring to everything he does. The best part about this debate is now we get to nitpick about the tennis. We get to nerd out. Oh, I kind of like the way Sinner hits through his backhand cross more. Yeah, but the way you're paralyzed by the Alcaraz drop shot, heavy pace combination, like, is that a more effective weapon combination? There's really no metric to prove out your argument is right, yours is wrong. It is really even across the board. And so, yeah, for the first time in a long time, you can say that about these two. And how is that not exciting for tennis fans moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah. Yannick Sinner's 2020. He's indoor hard courts.
Yeah.
He has always been incredible on indoor
Mm.
hard courts. So the difference between like Alcaraz a couple years ago had that enormous first half and he was at 90%, but you kind of knew he might fall off towards the end of the season. Sinner might finish this year at 90%.
Yeah.
And you also look at a lot of these losses and you're like, you could have won that match. So
Um, he's
it's
going to found the
unbelievable.
90-90 club. Win 90% of your matches, hold 90% of the time. That's nuts. Like,
Hold
what are
percentage
we even
doesn't,
doing here?
whatever. I'm not going to fight you about this. Hold percentage doesn't matter in this conversation.
But the
But
90-90 club.
you made that up. You completely made that up.
I
Okay.
know, but you can make it up. He's that good. 75-7 over his last 52 weeks.
So again, look, for those who don't know, when these guys both were at 0-0 majors, I kind of took the Alcaraz is going to be better. Gruskin took the Sinner is going to be better. We're not going to change that. They're not a part of the draft. But Alcaraz on my team, Sinner is on your team, Gruskin. Let's do rock, paper, scissors now for the first pick.
No. I insist. You have confidence in your first pick. I do not. I
Okay.
appreciate that clarity. Plus, Zoom rock paper scissors just feels like a disaster waiting to be cut. So I, you were kind enough to host today's show. I insist the first pick goes to you. I'm not gonna lie, the lack of snake draft threw me off for a second. I literally looked at my board and I was like, okay, do I have to maneuver at all? But I insist, first pick to you, my friend.
Okay. I gladly accept the first pick and I thank you for that. You're right. There's no obvious choice, and I don't know if this is a name that people will be expecting, but it's a guy I'm just totally in on, and it's Jakub Mensik of Czech Republic.
Ooh,
Yeah. Uh,
interesting.
Look, what I see in him really is a combination of serve and movement that to me is very undeniable. And in terms of the motion and the weapon in the serve at 19 years old, and even the way he's hitting spots already, like to me, it's it's not like we're not looking at Isner or Pechi Perikar or Opelka or like that tier, or even probably like Nick Kyrgios. But I think we're looking at or Hurkacz. I think we're looking at like a Dimitrov, Federer, Djokovic, Zverev. I think we're looking at that kind of server. And I'm watching the way he's defending and moving into corners. The court coverage is already amazing. The balance, the explosivity, and he hasn't fully grown into his body yet at 19 years old. He's going to build muscle. So when I look at Jakub Mensik and I think, well, your legs are going to get stronger, serve's going to get bigger, movement, you're going to get faster based on what he already has right now. I think he's going to be an absolute beast. Do you want to poke a hole? There's one part where I hesitate with Mensik, but I'll let you go first. Do you want to poke a hole in it?
Well, I want you to know he was fifth overall on my board. I had him second in my tier two of maybe not a major, but the upside is clear. And you mentioned it. You're projecting strengths. Guy has weapons. Now, he's holding 80.5% of the time this year. The big number for me, he's held 83.7% of the time, 2-1 against top 10 opponents so far this season. He's done all that while making fewer than 58% of his first serves. Like that's the number to me that just feels so improvable for him moving forward. And if he even makes a league average 62% of his first serves, he is going to be holding serve comfortably because that first serve, his ability to find the first forehand, his inside out first forehand in particular, his comfort level moving forward. This guy is going to be really good on hard courts throughout the course of his career. A guy who's already made a tour level quarterfinal on grass courts as well. I need to see a little more on the clay. He did beat Dimitrov in Madrid earlier this season. It's an upside play pick. Again, it's the least talked about stat. Jakub Menchik's been the youngest guy in the top 100 all season long. And he's 30 and 20 overall on the year. Like he has sustained a place at the tour level already. He's a better mover now than he was when he made that surprising third round at the US Open a year ago. He looks a lot better out of the backhand corner than I thought he did during that US Open run as well. Like I would argue the big strength for Jakub Menchik is there's no clear weakness for him at this point. My biggest concern is I just need to see it on clay more. So that's why I had a little bit of hesitancy compared to some others. But again, fifth on my list. It's upside wise, it's a very good pick.
Yeah, and the upside's the key for me. Like that's what I want in this conversation. We're talking about who's going to be ready to do battle with Alcaraz and Sinner 5 years from now, not who's a lock to be a top 20 player, or I can take someone who's in the top 20 now, if that were the conversation. And what I love about Mensik is projecting what he can be. For me, it's massive. The only thing I'll say, the part that gives me hesitation with him is neither ground stroke is like, oh my God, this is cash. Like
Yeah.
you love the backhand or you love the forehand. It's both like, okay, like you're a solid ball striker. It's nothing mind blowing. And that part is a little bit concerning. And then I would say more specifically, when he's hitting the forehand on the run, he doesn't get as much pace on the ball as I would want. Because of just, I think, some
He's
technical
still a little
stuff off
stiff.
of that. Stiff.
He's still a little stiff.
Yeah, it doesn't come natural. Like he doesn't get that much
Yeah.
on the ball when he's running to his forehand. But he's the movement part of it is great. It's just how big does the ball come off is maybe not as great. But he's pretty even off of both wings, just doesn't blow you away off of either wing. Gruskin, I think it's time for the number 2 overall pick in the draft.
Wow, again, opens up the board for me. And let me just say, if I had a snake draft, this draft would be over after pick number 3 because I could go get my top 2 on the board, and I think I could walk away with my top 3 ultimately. Again, I broke things down into tiers. Tier 1 for me is I see it already. You have the talent to win a major, and I sincerely put Jack Draper in this category. I have him as the number 1 player and number 1 prospect on my list.
Mm.
Feels like a mainstream, boring, trendy pick, given he came off of a U.S. Open semifinal. But I felt about this way about Jack Draper before this run in New York. And look, since Jack Draper walked onto the ATP Tour, he's played 117 total matches according to Tennis Abstract, 69 and 48 overall. Career averages for Jack Draper, 84.5% hold percentage. For what it's worth, top 50 players right now averages 82.9. Break percentage, 23.9%. Average right now of a top 50 player, 21.3%. Here's the point I'm trying to make. He is everything you said about Jakub Menchik, but a step later. And I would argue a step more explosive and maybe even a step better. Like the numbers say it. This is a guy who is good at everything. And the eye test certainly backs that up. A lefty with a big first serve who's comfortable serving and volleying. Obviously had the massive success this year on the grass courts in Stuttgart. A guy who moves so well in and out of corners and has delivered highlight reel on the run, forehand passing shot or backhand slaps, whatever it may be, tactically. You think you got to stay away from his forehand wing because that is clearly the more explosive, eye-popping weapon he possesses. The guy doesn't miss out of the backhand corner. And yeah, on clay courts, maybe that wing's going to be a little bit flat, but the depth he's able to generate, how well he hits it out in the run, how comfortable he is moving forward, he's even played the big boys close, like over the years. I know the Sinner match was a straight set match and not the prettiest tennis, but Draper beat Alcaraz in Queens Club earlier this year. And, again, he's been a guy in his peer group for so long. I don't think he looks at Sinner and Alcaraz with any sort of fear. And I know that that's a non-quantifiable thing, but I'm just all in on Jack Draper. The biggest, I guess we'll get to the biggest concern in a second. Would you poke a hole in that? Was he high on your board?
Yeah, I wanted him. I wanted him, and
How could you not take him 1? I'm shocked.
you're shocked I didn't take him 1?
I thought he was the clear number, not the clear number 1. I think Runa would be the mainstream number 1.
Yes.
I thought you were going to go that Draper route, though.
Yeah.
Because everything you can say about Menchik, I would argue, is just more explosive with Draper, the difference being age.
Well, right, exactly. I don't know if the explosive thing, I don't know if you can use the explosive part against against Yaka because he's 19 and clearly you just look at him and it's okay, this is a guy who has some developing ahead of him where it's not really the case with Draper who's 22. So, he's got 3 years on Mensick. But all
Yeah.
of the injury stuff with Jack, it
Yeah.
delayed his progress in a very significant way. If I'm poking a hole, like what concerns me about Jack Draper, first of all, extremely well rounded, so not an easy question to answer. But I guess just physically, are you someone who is built to withstand the modern baseline game? Like, are you gonna run into corners for 3.5 hours? Like, is that gonna be something that you're comfortable with? Because they're trying to get away from that more and more. Jack, be offensive, use your forehand as a weapon, come forward. And that has made him better.
Yeah.
He's very consistent. He is naturally a decent defender. I actually don't think he will. I don't project him to ever be as fast as Mensick will be. In terms
Okay.
of court coverage, I think Mensick's faster. But
Wow.
yeah, I look, the physical thing, I think it's getting
Okay.
better and better, and eventually I think it's going to get there.
I got to watch more Menchik tape then because we'll leave it up to the smartest YouTube commenters in the business, the Gill Gross YouTube channel commenters. Better athlete, Draper, Menchik. What do your eyes say? Because we do see that. We very much, that would be my biggest disagreement is it's just, I think Draper is a different level physically And I haven't seen that sort of fluidity out of Jakob yet, but that's typically where I miss when it comes to 18-year-old prospects. And again, I had him fifth on my list, but fifth versus one, I'll take the number one guy each
Look,
time.
they're similar height, right? Like Mensic's
Yeah.
6'4",
Similar
Draper's what?
builds too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you think you're
similar build.
penalizing Jack Draper because every shirt he wears is 2 sizes too big?
I think that just started at the U.S. Open. I didn't flag
He's
that.
he's always done that. I think it's because he
Really?
sweats so much. He needs a little extra space.
Really, I think it might be the opposite. I think he sweats so much that maybe he should look at smaller shirts that don't get
Interesting.
as heavy on him.
I
Anyway,
defer to you on all things fashion. I defer to you for pick number three.
I thought the oversized look, I thought he looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, he's a
But
good
I
looking
know
kid.
that's a hot take. It's bold.
Yeah.
All right. So, it's hard, right, with the speed thing. It's an interesting debate. Yeah, I think Mensik is going to cover the court better. If he doesn't right now, I think he'll cover the court better than Draper. Um, but Jack, for his size, he moves great. With my second overall pick, number 3 pick in the draft, I am going to take João Fonseca.
Ooh,
I'm going to do it.
okay. Okay, I love the pick. Make the case.
I obviously at this point, it's very hard not to take Holger, but Fonseca reminds me more of Yannick Sinner than anybody has ever reminded me of Yannick Sinner. And,
Oh,
and
1,000%.
that's what it comes down to. It's like you talk about a guy whose ball explodes off the racket in a way that's just different, and it's not off of one wing, it's off of both. And he's mobile enough. And honestly, the serve is coming along. I see it before my eyes, the serve getting bigger and bigger. It's undeniable. And he's also, by the way, he's very different. If I contrast my picks, he's very different from Mensik, because what I feel so solid with Fonseca is you're going to have one of the biggest and baddest forehands in the world, one of the biggest and baddest backhands in the world, and the ball striking is going to be king. And I haven't seen anything, any red flags like the movement or the serve or the mental game, anything that is going to stop me from backing a guy who I think hits an incredible forehand and an incredible backhand and is going to have top tier 1% power off of both wings.
It's a perfect case to make. He was the third player I had in tier one. And again, I'll get to draft 2 of my 3 tier 1 guys. Shout out to that. You said it perfectly. It's a Sinner clone. How he gets outside the ball in the backhand and can still drive the ball through the court, cross court with pace and angle. You're just not supposed to be able to draw the ball the way that he does. And I feel more confident in the Menchik serve. I feel more confident in the Draper serve. I know for sure they're going to win 3 points behind that. I also do want to, again, Fonseca isn't 6'4". He's not small, but I don't know if he's going to be quite as lengthy, quite as explosive
He's
as Yannick
plenty.
Sinner has. Yeah, exactly, as Yannick Sinner's turned into, but I'm willing to bet that he might be. I'm willing to bet he'll get 85, 90% of the way there. Movement is not an issue for a kid who's still just 18 years old. And yeah, the sample size is small, but the upside is immense. There's a reason this guy has come on the minds of so many tennis fans over the last year. It's because you watch him play, and in 3 points, you're like, who's that guy? Like, that guy hits it differently. It looks different. It sounds different. It moves different. It's a great pick by you. You've got the upside team right now. I like
I
this
know.
strategy. I'm starting to see what the board looks like.
Yeah, yeah. No, I certainly have. Look, youngest player to win a challenger this year, João Fonseca, won in Lexington on a hard court. He literally, he pushed Matteo Berrettini at Davis Cup on an indoor hard court. I know Matteo doesn't love indoor hard either, but this is a guy who's like grown up on clay, hasn't played much off clay, and the talent level and the ability level is so vast that you throw him on hard court, highest level competition he's also ever had to experience. Junior US Open champion, yes, but he learns quick. Like, he gets it so quickly. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, it comes down to the ball striking. I cannot pass it up.
You know who else won the Lexington Challenger 5 years
Yannick
ago?
Sinner.
Yannick Sinner, winner of the 2019 Lexington Challenger. Good company. Fonseca is keeping All right, I'll take my final tier one player, and a lot of commenters will probably find it disrespectful that this player lasted as long as he did, all the way to the fourth overall pick. You have to take Holger at this point right now, right? As good as you've seen things from a Musetti, a Shelton, a Fee, as excited as you are about a Pericard or some of these other young prospects you've got rising up the ranks right now as well. I just think, who's beaten Djokovic in a 1,000 level final? Who's made not one, but multiple quarterfinals at majors on multiple different surfaces? Who, for 6 months, has looked like a top five player in the world? You could say that about Holger Rune's first 6 months in 2023, from the start of the season all the way through to his Wimbledon quarterfinal before he got injured. He was probably the fifth best player in the world during that stretch of time. And, again, coming into this season, the debate wasn't Runa's the clear cut three. The debate was, hey, who's closer to Alcaraz, Sinner or Runa at this point? And we've seen Holger, I believe, already make a tour finals at this point of his career. Something remarkable to do for a guy who is barely drinking legal in the United States. Now, certainly there are some serious question marks surrounding Holger Rune. It does feel like this year, even, again, he's 14 in the world, and yet there were some inconsistencies for him. Yeah, there were certainly some highs, Cincinnati, and I think he made another quarterfinal either at the French or round of 16, something like that as well. But it was certainly a step back from what we saw in 2023. Feels like there's always a little uncertainty surrounding his coaching team as well, and just not having that solid, not have a solid team around you, to not know that comfort level that you see with Alcaraz and his team, with Sinner and his team. It's a quality you need to go from good to great in this sport. But from a tennis perspective, this is a kid as skilled as anyone we're going to talk about on this list from a technique standpoint. Again, the thing that makes me so frustrated, clearly the first 3 years, let's turn your forehand into a weapon you can dominate with. It sucks because it sacrificed many a Holger Rune backhands over the years, and his backhand is beautiful, and the depth he can generate with it, and how he can take the ball early, how he can get outside of it, how he can play slice and drop shot with it. He has developed skills, better weapons, better first serve, better volleyer. But he does at times feel lost on court, where it's like, well, I know I can do this, but what should I be doing at any given moment? Still, 21 years old, a skill set I would not bet against. I'm happy to get Holger Rune at fourth in this list because we already know what his best can look like.
I would have taken him too. I would
Yeah.
have taken him there as well.
Yeah.
I guess the reason I was able to pass up on him, and take Mensick and take Fonseca is Holger, for as great as we've seen him at his peaks, there's not one part of his game that is just going to buoy him. One thing that he relies on, that he completely trusts, that he doesn't have to overthink. For some players that'll be the serve. For some players it'll be, yeah, I like to rely on my athleticism. Like I always have my legs and I'm comfortable just getting consistent. For some players it might be, yeah, my forehand's a huge weapon. And Holger, you mentioned how many options he's had, and that sometimes confuses him, and it feels like he's overthinking, or he's not sure of himself, or issues that kind of arise. And I think he's been stricken with the what should I do syndrome, I think, for a while here. There were concerning signs last year, because he had a huge clay court season, just massive. But it's not like it was a consistent season for him a year ago either. So would it be crazy if he struggled to get back to, what was he, five in the world?
Yeah.
Would it be
Something like that.
crazy?
5 or 6. Um, Here's the thing. I mean, no. And it's also, he's played top five tennis for 3 months in a way no one else on this list has. Like, as much as you're projecting for
Yeah.
Fonseca, projecting for Menchik and Draper, you just mentioned it. His 2023 clay court season is the best stretch anyone on this list has. And to get that at fourth overall, to get that here, like, I think you have to value what you've seen. You don't have any questions about him physically. You mentioned it perfectly. It's the mental pieces. And let me just bet on a 21-year-old getting that together over the course of the next decade.
Yeah, mental piece, by the way, twofold, because there's like
Yeah.
the tactical stuff and the feel of the game that I think sometimes isn't there. There's also just the emotional aspect for Holger where it can be very up and down, and I've seen it affect the effort level. Like I've certainly watched Holger Rune at times in the last year and be like, okay, he's checked out.
Mhm.
I missed the first two sets at the U.S. Open this year against Nakashima, but I watched the entire third set. Looked like a guy checked out, just not there. Lights weren't on. Um, I that can obviously get in the way of talent and ability. So it's something to watch out for. And yes, I think there's so much time for Runa to figure it out. I think history would be on his side. I think
Mhm.
like somebody who at 19 years old did what he did, history would be on the side of at some point he'll be back.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right. Um, I'm tempted to take a guy who's less of a
Mm.
risk at this point, like someone who I'm
Okay.
more comfortable with, that I know is going to be a horse for me immediately. If I'm building my team, because you're right.
This is an
There's
inning eater. Yeah, you need someone who's going to go out there, give you 6 innings, maybe 2 earned runs, 2 to 3. I think you're going to
exactly.
pick Lorenzo Musetti.
Yeah, I am. Exactly. That's my pick. I'm taking Lorenzo Musetti.
You described him perfectly. That's so funny. As you're like, I need someone consistent, someone I know about. I want you to know he's in my tier 2 of not a major, but the upside is there. I'm curious your pros and con list.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. If I look at who's going to win a major, my first two picks, I feel better about them because I see the potential for an entirely elite package of a tennis player. For Musetti, there are probably going to be some holes
Okay.
or some weaker aspects of his game. The serve plus one firepower, the early firepower. I don't know that it's ever going to measure up with the very best. I've always felt like he fights somewhat of an uphill battle being a one-handed backhand who doesn't have a big serve and a big forehand. So
Mhm.
you're not just a one-hander, you're a one-hander who's reliant on breaking serve a lot, on winning a lot of baseline rallies. I don't know that we've seen that mold of tennis player have a ton of success in recent times, but Musetti is so talented, so gifted with his variety, his ability to defend, his feel for angles, fantastic forehand drop shot. I think underrated pace off of the forehand. I don't know that people put him up there, but when you watch him live, especially, the
Mhm.
ball's coming off really, really big and heavy. So I think that's an aspect for him. And the mental side is clicked this year,
Mhm.
and it wasn't there before, but he now is extremely focused. He wants it very bad. The level of compete used to be 5 out of 10, you know,
Yeah.
now it's 8 or 9 out of 10. That's what's changed for him. And since he's been bringing that to the table, he's been a top 20 guy. So
Yeah.
that's that.
It's a great pick. He played a couple of challengers before the French Open started. From that stretch to the end of the Olympics, he was playing top 12, top 10, maybe even top 8 tennis. And you kind of mentioned this, but he's in the conversation best movers on tour. The fluidity across surfaces, his ability to extend rallies, his improvisational skills as a defender. He is as good with that skill set as just about anyone, maybe even better than anyone we've discussed on this list so far. The serve has turned into a real weapon. He hits his spots well. He's comfortable moving forward. He can play slice. He can play drop shot. Great touch. He's much more assertive with his forehand earlier in rallies as well. And I agree, it's still a bigger swing, but he's turned that into a serious weapon behind everything else he's done. Again, that swing is big, that it is still a one-handed backhand. Does that make him susceptible to weakness against elite pace? Sure, but he's an elite athlete that seems to be finding responses for everything that people throw at him. And that's the problem for me. That's why I have him in tier 2, not tier 1, is he's reactive, not as proactive as some of the guys I have higher on my list, but he does feel like a sure thing, like especially with how it's clicked. If this is who he is, even if the level doesn't change, this is who he is for the next decade. That's a top 16 guy. That's a guy who's in the mix at all the events. So I don't hate the pick at all.
Yeah, and the surface aspect is interesting for Musetti as well because the grass resume right now is his best. But everybody
Great.
obviously would, yeah, you think about him as a clay guy.
Yeah.
Grass has been his best surface. Is it because the chip returns work best? Is it because the slice backhand, is so effective on the grass? Is it because his footwork patterns kind of preserve his court coverage? He's not a big slider. He's really good with the small steps when he moves into the corners. I think a lot of that is kind of plays in. But I like the fact that he's shown, okay, you do not have a court speed problem, right? Maybe the hard court stuff hasn't fully come together yet. There were also a lot of good signs at the U.S. Open until the weird Nakashima match. That was a crazy, crazy match. Should have gone 5. Musetti blew a huge lead. But I like that we're not just seeing clay. Grass has been his best surface. Just want to throw that out there. Let's go to your pick now.
This is the toughest pick I've faced yet because the board kind of opened up for me beautifully given your foolishness. Man, heart versus head. I think I might end up getting them both, so I don't want to give away the second name. I'm going to stay on brand. If you've made a slam semifinal, you should be drafted at this point of where we're at. And Ben Shelton's done exactly that. And there's just something to, like, did he have the marquee result in 2024 the way he did in 2023? He did not. But Ben Shelton clearly got better here in his second full season at the tour level. And, again, you look at for a guy pretty consistent at the majors all year long, 3rd round Australia, 3rd round Roland Garros, 4th round Wimbledon, 3rd round US Open. For a guy who was seeded at all those slams, that's essentially holding seed across the board. You look for him on the clay courts this year. Was it remarkable? No, and it's buoyed by that Houston title he won, but 8-4 overall. That is a clear step forward from what we saw in 2023. You look at him from a hold percentage standpoint, he's always projected to have an elite first serve. Lo and behold, he's now 4th in hold percentage and winning 78.8% of his first serve points. That's 3rd overall. Oh, no, excuse me. That's not 3rd. I was looking at the wrong number, but that's a top 10 number. He trails just the guys you'd expect, the Berrettinis, Hurkaczes, etc. of the world, but that's who he's hanging out with now. The second serve has made strides forward this year. The forehand's an issue. The returns in play is an issue. But Ben's a primetime performer. I have no doubt about anything he throws at you physically. And he's going to be able to play matches on his terms. He's a guy who shows up to the big events, a guy who absolutely, like 2028 U.S. Open, he beats Alcaraz in the quarterfinals before losing a tight 4-set match to like Jack Draper in the semifinals. Like Ben has that sort of win, that sort of primetime performance in him. I'll take him 3rd on this list.
He's the last guy who's essentially not the last player to beat Sinner who's not like elite tier. I mean, Rublev had the right.
Who's
I mean,
not
think
Alcaraz. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, he's like
Djokovic.
the last guy to beat Sinner who's not Alcaraz, like since the U.S. Open last year. Anyway,
it's nuts.
Look, Shelton, we could go long on him. I don't want to, but 10 out of 10 serve potential, 10 out of 10 mental game, in my opinion, as far as like winning goes. You might have 100%. Opinions on his mental game, like, oh, he's annoying out there. He's
guy's a winner. Guy's a winner. He's there to win.
Exactly.
100%.
And when he loses, by the way, it's because of his skills. It's not because of his mental. Okay.
Exactly.
Like he always gives himself the best chance to come out there and compete at the best that he's able to.
He's out there to cut throats, and sometimes he cuts his own because he hits himself out of a match.
Yeah. Yeah. It can happen. Now, look, where am I hesitant on Ben? There's so many things he can get better.
Like, you think this forehand?
The forehand, look, I'll tell you, the forehand was unbelievably unreliable for so much of this year. And then at the U.S. Open, he wasn't missing any forehands.
Locks in. Exactly.
So it's like, what happened? You could say the backhand's a bigger problem than the forehand. I would take argument. It's very flat. Talk about, you love the word stiff. I would say stiff for that backhand. He's working on the slice. It's not an awesome slice. The return is kind of a struggle for him. So I think there are issues off of both wings. I think the volley on the forehand is pretty rough. I think his backhand volley is pretty good. You have all of these little quirks with Ben. You feel like almost that he's got a lot of polishing to do. And while that, you can look at that as obviously a positive, okay, there's potential there. it's also a negative because he's not 19. Okay, he
He's
is
not
at an advanced
14.
period.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like who changes their technique? Give me one example of someone who's like non-injury related, made a huge tactical switch to their grip, and it like changed their game fundamentally. That just doesn't happen at this point. You kind of are who you
Yeah,
are.
I actually think I project good things for his forehand. I think that backhand is going to be stuck where it's at right now because when you don't have like loose flexible wrists,
Yeah.
you usually never get loose flexible wrists.
No, it's wrist expert, Gill Gross. I like it. What's your fourth pick?
All right. So to recap right now, I have Mensick, Fonseca, Musetti. Gruskin has Draper, Runa, Shelton. My next pick, it could be someone who you have somewhat low. I could see it going either way. But he has my two favorite qualities in a tennis prospect. Borderline three. I am taking Flavio Caboli.
Oh, I'm gonna. Okay, okay, I love it.
He is lightning fast, and he has a forehand in that perfect kind of balance of it's damaging, but I feel like you can hit 10 in a row without missing. And that comes from, the heavy RPMs, the repeatable footwork patterns. The word I love is sustained aggression. So when you are super, super fast and you have a great, great forehand, it's kind of my thing. Like give me that. And then, mentally, I think there's a lot to like as well. And that's basically my simple argument for Flavio Caboli.
All of these Italians, Musetti, Caboli, Arnaldi, Sinner, obviously, there's just a fluidity in all those hips. Like, what do I have to do to get those hips? And he's an athlete. He is going to be in the match. He has a counter to anything you throw at him. I have him in my tier three. It's the first name we've dipped into tier three. I'm calling this tier just you're good. Like, do I have a ton to say beyond that? No, but you're good. Like Flavio Caboli is good at tennis. He has all the requisite things you'd want. I don't know if he's great at anything. And all the players I have listed above him, I think and there's 7 of them, have a singular great quality that I can turn to without a debilitating enough weakness that it becomes an issue. He's very much in the tier of you're good. Another guy, he's going to be top 32 for a pretty long time. How much higher than that does he go? Will he ever reach a tour finals? I'm not sure if we ever see a top 8 season out of Caboli, but we will see a lot of top 32s put together. So I like that pick at 4. Can I go right into my 4 now as well? We can just go because, by the way, we could spend 7 minutes on every pick. This draft would end when the 2025 season starts. So I like the idea of now that we've gotten through the headliners, maybe moving a little quicker.
Fully agree. I'm there.
All right. I like it. And I think I see a message from you now on Zoom, and that's exactly what you said. So see, I was
Yeah,
like,
no,
all right.
so honestly, I wasn't sure what you were doing there because I just put that in our chat. I said, let's start going faster. And
That's
then you say
hilarious.
like, hey Gil, like, what do you think? Should we start
That's
going
really
faster?
funny.
And
I did not see that. That's
I'm
really
like, is this a
funny.
bit right now? Or
That's really funny. I wish it was a bit. It's not. That's actually hilarious. My last tier 2 guy is Arthur Fee. And I think if we would have done this list at the start of 2024, he would have been higher. He's had an sort of year. Obviously got the win over Hurkacz, made a second week at Wimbledon. The combination of athleticism, the weapons he possesses, his serve, his forehand on clay, when his backhand line is landing, it is, I mean, go watch the match he played against Zverev in Hamburg.
yeah.
Like that, right? I submit that tape as my case for you should have drafted him above Flavio Caboli. We'll let the fans decide. My list is crushing yours based off of my draft board. But we know sometimes how that folds out. I have Fee as my 4th pick, and I think it's a good one.
Yeah, like in theory, it's funny with Feast. And by the way, I think you're supposed to pronounce the S.
The S is in, so it's Arthur Feast.
It's
I
in.
apologize.
It's Feast.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
Also, last time I came on your show, I got a lot of heat for Zverev. I've been working Zverev. I say Zverev in the mirror 20 times a day to start the day.
Nice.
It's Zverev.
Very
so shout
good.
out to the listeners.
No, you're not joking. Like my YouTube commenters will like keep me on point on the pronunciation.
I love it. Yeah. I'm
like, do you know what's a funny one, dude? When Botic first had
And
his
you call
run
it
at the US Open.
Rotterdam. Sorry, carry on.
uh, when Botic first had his run at the US Open and he was
Yeah.
like, hey, everyone, here's how to say my name, I was definitely like Van de Zandschulp. Like I was
Mhm.
on that. And then he just disappeared for a year and it became Van de Zandschulp. And
Yeah.
right away, it's like the comments are like, nope, it's Schulp. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I forgot. I'm sorry.
It's good.
Uh, okay. Peace. Right. He checks every box.
Every box.
Yet there's like something, there's a little bit of artistry there missing.
Yeah.
Do you
I
see what I'm saying? Like, if you go attribute by attribute, does he move well? Yup. Serve, ball toss is way too high, but it's pretty big.
yeah. Yeah.
The forehand, long swing, but big, heavy forehand. Backhand, not a weakness. Like he's very comfortable with it. You know, you do love the combination of speed around the court and heaviness of ball, which is like very in a very basic way is a beautiful foundation. I just find that the way he puts everything all together, like when he's actually competing in the match, it's just too much inconsistency. And sometimes it feels like he's doesn't like feel the point construction all that
100%.
well. Like it's almost a Felix situation, although you don't have like the first serve weapon and the backhand weakness like Felix does. But it's almost a Felix situation in the sense that I do think he misses a little bit of that like natural feel for what he's doing out there.
It's a perfect argument. The case for Caboli over a fee would be Caboli is always one shot better than you. You don't know what that shot's going to be, but he's got that extra shot in the bag. Felix, sometimes they're just running and swinging, and they're trying to overwhelm you with the
Yeah.
physicality of everything they do. Upside wise, I'd bet on that physicality and Fee to figure it out because there's enough improvisational skill flashed that I'm like, okay, this guy he knows how to think through the game and knows when to pull out the magic. But doing that point in, point out needs some work still. The skill is there, so I'll happily take him at 4.
All right. My next
Now we get
pick.
interesting. Now it's literally upside versus are you good? Like this is fun.
Yeah. No, this pick for me, it's very interesting because I'm looking at my board. Obviously, I see who's highest up, and I'm a little hesitant to go there. I do think this is a guy though. If I don't take him, I think you will. I think you will take him. Um,
Do it.
I think I'm gonna snag him because
Is it a
for me the
Pericard
potential
pick?
there is there, and it's Giovanni Pecci Pericard.
Mm-hmm. It's a great pick. That was going to be my next pick. You
Okay,
stole
there
it
you
from
go.
me.
That makes me feel good. I had a feeling that he wouldn't be someone who would kind of slip through the cracks. So I'm glad I jumped on him. There's two schools of thought. First is serve bots don't win slams,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, maybe in a previous era at Wimbledon, you could I don't know, even Ivanisevic won Wimbledon. Uh, but in general, it's like who wins majors? The elite returners, the guys who break the most win majors. Period. That's how it's been. That said, you've seen guys with Perry like serves who don't have to be particularly great in a lot of other areas and can make the top 10. Now, you have to have something else. Like, I think John Isner gets a lot of flack, and it's like, hey, guys, forehand was actually really good. Like, is anybody going to talk about that? Or we're just going to say Isner's just a serve and he sucks at everything? No, like the forehand was good. Um, Perry though, he comes forward. He's working on the volleys. It's a bit of a work in progress, but I think he's going to be like this big serve net rush guy. That's what I think he's going to be. I think it's going to take some time. And by the way, like he can also really crack the forehand and he slices his backhand for the most part. You know, the drive one hander is never really going to be there. And like, is there enough natural athleticism where he's not like a total, stuck in the mud guy? I think there's just enough there. So for me, it's like Perry Carr, he's going to hit the serving level of Isner, Opelka, Kyrgios. So how good does he need to be in the other areas? Like, I think it's going to take some time, but I feel pretty good that he's going to have a cup of tea and then some in the top 15.
Moves well, serves well, can take the racket out of your hands. There's a lot to be excited about him as a prospect, and I do think weighing his upside against what we see out of all the remaining prospects, I think he had to be the obvious pick there. Again, it gets kind of tricky at this stage because now, again, you are projecting, do I like your weapons? Do I like the sample size of matches I've seen from you versus do you maybe have a bigger sample size? And maybe it's not going to be great, but I know you're going to be good for a pretty long time. That's the difference between my tier 3 and tier 4. Tier 3, you're good. Tier 4, you possess an undeniable skill, but there's also a clear weakness. For Pericard, it's the backhand return. Like, that's going to be a problem for him in a bunch of different matches moving forward. And if you can get him on the back foot, he's just a different player than he is when he's behind that first serve. Man, this is a really tough pick
Quick question.
because,
Let me distract
yeah,
you.
please.
This is tactical. Very simple question. Do you think throughout his
Trade
career,
offer? I'll give you
he's
this
going to
one for your
continue?
next two.
What'd you say?
Trade offer? I'll give you this one for your next two.
Denied. Do you think he'll go throughout his career hitting 2 first serves?
Yeah, I kind of think that's the future. Like, weapons are the future, man. All these guys are so gifted athletically. Sometimes you watch men's tennis in person and you're like, how did he win that match? I'm like, I don't know. Like, he made a few more first serves. His forehand was a little bit more freakishly hard. Like, listening to Jake Fernley talk about a Djokovic match and be like, look, Djokovic doesn't hit the ball that much bigger than anyone else I've ever faced. In fact, it's the same. It's just the precision, it's the accuracy, it's the variety of things he can do. I think he develops a really good kick serve at some point that he mixes in, but I do think a lot of first serves is the Pericard future.
I hope so. I think he'll average 110 miles per hour on his second serve for the rest of his career, if not more.
I like that. It bought me some time. All right. I want a handsome Italian. I'll go Matteo Arnaldi with my 5th pick. For everything you said about Cabali, just apply it to someone with black hair instead of brown hair. Like, I think he's really good for a really long time. He's fast, he's fit, he's fluid. I just don't know. He's great at absorbing and redirecting, but asserting himself the way you need to be top 10, I'm not sure I'm quite there, but I think he's going to be good for a while.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think his forehand is maybe a touch more unreliable. Caboli's, I just think I would trust my life with it a little bit more so than Arnaldi's. They both have a bit of a serve issue, but
Yep.
Arnaldi actually serves big and it can go anywhere. Caboli, more precision, but it's not as big. So it's a fascinating comparison between those two. But I like that you took Arnaldi. I've been high on Arnaldi all year long.
I actually have Arnaldi above Caboli in my own personal draft board, but vis-a-vis.
Okay.
I don't think that's a word, but carry on.
My next pick. I'm between 2 guys. It's not easy. Not easy between these 2 guys.
Take them both. I'll take 2 after.
No.
Okay, good answer.
That's no fun. Huh. Okay, I'm going to go with the guy who I think you're going to steal. Okay. It's not necessarily that I think he's better, but give me Yuri Lehechka.
Ooh,
who has one of the most simple games. Did I take your guy?
That's who was next up on my draft board.
Let's
great
go.
Pick. A great
let's
pick.
Go.
A great pick.
What's the comparison for Lehechka? It's almost like he's almost like, well, Berdych has been the one that everybody's thrown out. Like, he's Berdych. It's a little shorter. He moves a little faster. I actually think he's a more violent ball striker than Berdych. Like, Tomas was a really big guy, a lot of mass, and he had these big smooth swings. Lehechka he almost swings harder at the ball, but if you look at the average speeds and stuff, man, he's going to spend his career at the top of the leaderboards of average forehand speed. He's going to be up there in RPMs, and his backhand, sometimes I wonder if maybe he should scale back a little bit and go for less on his backhand. But yeah, you can't hide. You can't hide. So, by the way, serves like mid 130s. So he crushes the ball more than maybe anybody on the list, other than, like, if you want to throw the serve into the mix, and that's where maybe you dock João Fonseca. Does anybody punish the tennis ball more than Lehechka?
With the violence that he does, it's it's severe. Like
Yeah.
he has real weapons. He's made a second week at a slam. We've seen him play top 12 tennis, dare I say, for 6 weeks consecutively, maybe 4 weeks consecutively. And he's had some injury issues, certainly, that get you concerned. But another guy where you just can't fake the weapons. Like that's what would make him the next pick. Is he's also the Jason Tatum of tennis in the sense that you think like, oh, this guy's probably 24, 25 years old now, right? He's been around for a little bit. He's 22. Like he is sneaky young on this list as well. It's a great pick. You stole him out from underneath me. He's a little stiff for me. Like he's got one speed. He's not a guy who's going to hit you with short angle. He'll play some slice, but again, you talk about it. Violent ball striking is the name of his game. It's a good skill to
Yeah.
have, but it's a little too one speedy for me. So that would be my concern and why I had him this long. I'm going to go. Yeah, this is where it gets tough, man. Tier 3 or tier 4. I'm going to dip into my tier 4 upside pick. People have fallen off of the Jerry Shung bandwagon probably too quickly, considering the 19-year-old has had the tour level success that he's had, considering he feels like one of those elite ball strikers from the baseline, just can go Mach 12 at any given moment down the line or cross court off both wings. He is not the best athlete, certainly, and he's had some injury issues hamper him at times, but he also is the marathon match man. Like it feels like anytime Jerry Sheng is playing a tournament, he's playing a 3.5 hour 3-setter that he's winning. And how well he strikes the ball, that he's always been a guy in his generation. This is like anyone who hasn't quit on Marvin Bagley or like sees Harry Giles out there and is like, but he was a 5-star blue chip in his recruiting class. That's my Jerry Shang pick here. He's still top 100, by the way. Second youngest guy in the top 100. The weapons are real. Jerry Shang's really good. Like I'll take him next on this list.
Yeah. I mean, he's got what I like, right?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of quickness. He's got a nice heavy forehand. Um, the big improvement he's made. His serve used to be horrible
Well,
at this
bad.
level.
Yeah.
And I don't think he knew that like that was an issue
Yeah,
until
that's
this last offseason. And somehow he got it in his head like, wait, I actually can't be a pro tennis player with this serve at the level that I want to be. And to his credit, he's bulked it up completely. Uh, that said, I look at him and I'm like, all right, are you going to be so imposing offensively that's going to take you to the top? Not sure. Are you so tough defensively that you're consistent and you're athletic and you're going to grind? I don't know if I see that either. So I'm almost seeing Shung is the first guy that I think we've drafted where I'm thinking like, okay, what's the ultra strength? And
yeah.
I'm missing that, but I like the pick. I had
For
him.
me, it's the firepower. It's that I think that firepower could become a
Yeah.
serious strength.
Well, I had him 13th on my board, and
Mm.
that was the 10th pick. So I'm in a similar zip code to you there.
Okay, I like it. Who's next up for you?
Next up for me is Arthur Cazot.
Ooh, wow. Overdrafted. Okay, carry on.
No, no,
Like
no.
I he had his cup of coffee in January.
uh Again, very, very speedy. Uh and he's got a
So
big
just
serve.
quickly here, I don't mean to cut you off, but I do think we've reached the point where a lot of obvious names have been said. Here's who's left on the board, just quickly. Nakashima, Mahach. Baez turns 24 this year, but you could have snuck him on the list. You've got guys like Mickelson, Navone, Darderi, Kazo, Van Asha. I would throw Luca Nardi in that mix because we saw him beat Djokovic earlier. Like that's sort of the tier of player we're on from a tour level accomplishment standpoint. Or you can start to turn your list to doing some projecting and starting to look big picture, maybe a younger player who you've seen have success on the challengers. But just to give some perspective on what the board looks like moving forward. I apologize for cutting you
Yeah.
off.
No, I think that's helpful for people. Yeah, Cazot has a really big serve weapon and he's very, very fast. The knock on him, it's almost like a lighter weight version of Mensick who hasn't, is a lot older, not a lot older, but a little bit older, hasn't had the same kind of success, doesn't have the same, big frame. But it's almost like just the ball striking for Kazo is that part of it there. I think particularly with the forehand, because I do think his backhand is quite nice. But look, Kazo right now for me is a why not guy. I don't
Sure.
see a why not, because there's plenty of explosiveness in his game, in my opinion, and there's also not a massive weakness.
That's interesting. I had him 21st on my list of prospects. He's a tier 6 guy for me. Tier 6 is you're better than I have you on my list, but there's a lot of people on this list. And so tier 6 is like, look, I know you're a solid top 100
Look,
player. I just have some doubts.
sure, there are some guys who, and I feel the same way. It's like, for your age, you are in a great spot, but I don't see it. And maybe that's
Yeah.
on me, but I don't see it. I mean, Kazo might be that guy for you,
Yeah.
but
I, I
I
it's not
think
that I
there's a
don't
lot. I
it's not
think
that
there's
I
a lot
don't
there.
see it. Yeah, I just think they're like so next up for me, I'm gonna take a guy who I think has fallen too long on this list. I'm gonna take Brandon Nakashima, who has already done the yo-yo of I fell out of form. I'm out of the top 100. I got to go play challengers. I got to work my way back. And now he's done that. And he's back inside the top 50. And you look right now by hold percentage amongst top 50 players. Brandon Nakashima currently ranks eighth amongst top 50 players. He's holding serve 88.1% of the time. His serve has just turned into a monstrosity. And he can hit the ball big off both wings. Now, those of you that remember 2021 and 2019 Brandon Nakashima, like it's funny because his profile coming out was he was this elite ball striker, this elite returner who could take things a little bit early, and he's clearly bulked up for the sake of developing bigger
That was just
weapons.
wrong, though.
Okay. Well, not false. You're not wrong, but I'm saying he's got real weapons now, and like he knows what to do with those weapons. He still has retained that court sense, and I think is still a pretty good mover, a pretty good improviser, can generate pretty good depth off both wings. Has turned himself into a good volleyer. Brandon Nakashima is good. Like again, he's another one of my tier 3. You're good guys, and so I'm gonna throw him in this list.
All the skills are there. The forehand can
Yeah.
be erratic. The athleticism caps him, though. And I think that's why he's fallen so low. Now, I'm going to be honest. I wish I took him.
Over Kazo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
love that.
it's not as if I forgot
Count
about
it
him.
on the
Like,
board. Yeah.
no, he's definitely he's right there on my list. It's just after you picked him, it was the first pick that I've had like this, like, I kind of wish that was me.
Yeah, dude. You got Pericard. You got Lechechka. I like my board better. I'm
Fair
winning
enough.
this draft.
I
No,
I like
it's
mine better.
yeah. Who's your 8 man? Who's first? What is this guy? I'm trying. This is the Trevor Ariza of your team. Who is
Yeah,
he?
like this guy's still getting some PT playing
Yeah.
time, but not a ton.
7 minutes in game 6.
Yes. Uh, Between two guys. Yeah, give me Sebastian Baez.
Oh, great pick.
Look,
Because you
man,
know who he is on clay.
exactly. How many titles does this guy? This guy's been playing on tour for 3 seasons, and I
Yeah.
think he might have 5 titles.
Yeah, I
Let
mean,
me. I guess I
look,
should not
the
guess.
thing
I should
is,
check.
if tennis is happening in South America, Sebi Baez is probably winning the event.
He's
Like
got six
that,
titles.
yeah, it's remarkable. I
So
mean,
many
again,
players don't.
we're still
Oh,
waiting for him to make his first appearance at a European, like a serious European clay court event, but he is that good on clay.
I gotta think there's some mental stuff with him. I think he's got a little bit of stage fright, a little bit of, the pressure hurts him, because there's been a real gap, first of all, in his ability to translate his game onto hard court, other than the title that he won in Winston-Salem last year. It's been difficult for him to do that. The serve is Schwartzman level,
Mhm.
but he does bring a more of a weapon off the ground in the forehand than Schwartzman was ever able to. The backhand is a little bit attackable. So look, there are problems with Baez. Obviously, serve backhand isn't tremendous. Mentally, he can kind of, I think, go into a bit of a hole with himself. But if you're talking about a clay court where he's going to get to use his forehand and be impossible to hit through, he's gonna rack up. He's gonna make runs, and exactly, he's gonna dominate on clay. He's gonna continue to be, one of the favorites at all of the Golden Swing events, and at some point it's gotta come over and start translating to the bigger clay court events.
He's been top 40 guy for 2 straight years. Fee can't say that. Pericard can't say that. Arnaldi can't say that. Shung can't say that. Kazo, Nakashima, none of these guys can say that. So I have no problems with the pick. I'm going to stay in that similar spirit. I am going to go a little bit lower on my board here and start doing some projection. I don't know if I project him ever being a top 10 player in the world. I don't even know if he'll develop the weapons to be top 25. I know for a fact Lerner Tien's going to be in the top 100, if not top 75 for the next decade. And I had this conversation with Carousel, who had the opportunity to play him recently in a futures final. Some people are just one shot better than you. Some people know they find the pattern that breaks down your game repetitively, point by point by point, and they just attack you relentlessly. And Lerner Tien has that characteristic to his game. He will find the thing that makes you most uncomfortable, and he has the skill set to execute it. He can put the ball on a dime. It's Djokovician, his precision around the court. That how well he hits the slice wide serve ad side, and you know that next forehand can go anywhere because he moves that ball so well around the court. Is he an elite athlete? Does he have elite explosiveness? Does he have elite size? No, he doesn't have any of those things. But Lerner Tien does not have a tennis problem. Like Lerner Tien's tennis is already top 50. He's picked up a couple of challenger titles. He's like 99-6. It's not actually that, but it is like 48-6 or something crazy over his last. No. It was 61-11. That was the number. 61-11 over his last 72 matches.
Crazy.
28 in a row. Like, I'm just going to bet on Lerner, a former Junior Slam finalist, so the pedigree is there. I'll throw Lerner Tien on my list.
So this is the first guy you've taken who I just wasn't going to take him. Like he just wasn't going to
Okay.
make my 12.
Okay.
But I get it. I get where you're coming from. And it might just be his game is less obvious,
Yeah.
but his game is not obvious. And I
Yeah.
see the winning. I see all of that. And, but I just look at it and I'm not really seeing a mold or the weapons that I think, oh, I've seen that work at the highest level, and
Sure.
therefore I see it in you. That's what's missing for me, but I totally get that pick. I'm gonna go with Tomas Mahach,
Yeah, he was the
who's
highest player remaining on my board. I took Tien, even though he's below him. That had to be taken.
yeah, absolutely. He almost feels like a bit of an outlier at this part in the draft, being
Yeah.
world number 35. Someone who's picked up some really great wins. I think he's reached some pretty insane levels at points this year. Best run is the final in Geneva. Backhand is elite. Forehand is middleweight to lightweight, a little bit spinny, moves around the court. He's pretty quick. He's a spot server. He's kind of like a lefty server, but he's not lefty. He just kind of like slices the ball with a lot of precision and angle. So he doesn't have your conventional weapons, but he kind of he can be spectacular at times with the way he can construct points and kind of figure out ways to finish against you. A lot of angles, a lot of craftiness. Again, he's having a lot of success already, so I feel pretty good about that pick.
My tier 3: Arnaldi, Kaboli, Nakashima, Baez, Mahach. You're good. Those are good players. I don't know
Yep.
if the upside's any higher for this group, but those are all players you should be ranked 25 through 40 for the 5 years of their prime. And I got no problem with the Mahach pick. Obviously, has had himself a breakout 2024 season. All right, now we're talking upside. Players on the board still top 100: Mickelson, Navone, Darderi, Van Asche, Dardy. I'm going to go with Gab Diallo. Throw him on my list. Gabriel Diallo, third round, I believe, U.S. Open earlier this year,
Yep.
former Kentucky All-American, a guy I've been high on for 3-4 years now consecutively. Size, speed, weapons. He's got all three. Can serve and volley. Again, the technique is not the most pure, but finds a way to maneuver through wins, knocking on the door of making a top 100 debut. And there just feels like, again, he can hit a speed, he can hit a pace that you need to hit if you're going to succeed at the highest levels of this game. And at this point, we're doing a lot of projecting. I just think if you're trying to project upside remaining and counter that and balance that with the results already produced, Gab Diallo's next on my list. I've long been a believer. I think his backhand's pretty smooth as well. Like, I'm just a believer in Gab Diallo. Put him next on my list.
Great pick. I'm a believer as well. What stands out to me about him is for his height, his footwork is really sharp. And
Really sharp. Great
yeah,
call.
you
Yep,
don't
great
see that very
observation.
often. So I
Mhm.
I like Diallo a lot. All right, this next pick, tough one for me because we're getting to the point where there's guys, and I'm not sure like if I do fully believe in them or not.
Are we gonna get
Um,
a Raphael Yoder pick out of you? You really
no,
liked what you saw in New York?
no.
Okay,
You want to go with someone I've seen in New York, and I kind of want him on my team,
do it.
Francisco Comasagna. And
Ooh,
I don't know what he was not on my radar until this year at all. So I don't know what it looked like last year, the year before. He's I think he might be 22. So he's not, let me check that. He's not, so young that it makes sense. He's 23. So he's actually at the limit. Uh, and right now he's world number 100. But again, it's kind of my mold. The forehand is excellent. The speed is excellent. The backhand right now on fast surfaces is a problem. He can't protect it. Taylor Fritz ate it up, and I don't know how much he's getting out of his serve these days. But he's had a couple of good runs. He's kind of fresh onto the scene, and his right forearm is absolutely enormous, and I think that's the key to his big forehand.
I got no
That was a
problems
test
with
if
the
you're
pick.
paying attention.
No, first of all, I am always paying attention. What I was gonna say is, I did not I didn't watch enough of his U.S. Open run to feel firmly about him. Is the truth. He's also in this tier 6 I have of you're disrespected and you deserve more respect based on your accomplishments. And again, this tier is Kazo, him, Darderi, Navone, all guys who have done serious things at the tour level. I just need to see more. Like, I'm just not sold on the Kamasanya. I loved how well he competed, but I'm just not sold on the skill set. I don't know how else to say it. Like,
I
I
think we're
need to
at that
see
point in
more.
the draft. I think we're in the
Yeah.
not sold part of the draft.
Yeah, but I want to see a skill. I guess is Komasanya, you like his game, you
His
like his
forehand,
weapons. Yeah, you like his forehand enough that so like I mean the disrespect to Alex Mickelson right now. I have him slotted into one of my draft slots of not going below this. But I'll
great
give you an
forehand and
opportunity.
speedy.
Yeah, it's all right. That's fine with me. I'll allow it. I'll concede that it's not the worst pick I've ever heard. Um man. Okay, I just want to say that 2022 me would have had Dominic Streaker drafted by now, like so quickly. And part of me does wonder, like, yeah, he struggled obviously since with injuries and different things, but does letting a guy who has flashed that sort of upside drop this far, is that actually a major crime at this point of the draft in terms of just trying to take a swing? You know what? I want to have the Mickelson conversation quickly. So I'll just take him now. I'm going to go with Alex Mickelson. I'll take him on my team. Look, no one is ever going to accuse Alex Mickelson of being fast. Like, that's just not his thing. But he is an elite ball striker. Like, he is an elite court sense guy. He is a guy with a big serve who's comfortable volleying, comfortable playing up into the court, moving north south the way he almost has to athletically. Like, I used to say Taylor Fritz was going to be too slow, and Taylor Fritz just made the U.S. Open final. And the thing you can control more than anything is diet and training in the weight room to improve your speed. I'm going to bet on Alex Mickelson to do that because his weapons are real. His serve is real. His ability to return serve on the rise is real. Change direction is real. Yeah, the forehand grip's a little bit funky, but Alex Mickelson is very good at tennis. I'll take his weapons and bet on his athleticism to improve.
Yeah, I mean, as you should. Like, this is a guy I was hoping you would take him because he probably should have gone higher, but
Yeah.
he's someone who, again, he's one of these like I don't really get it kind of guys for
Mm-hmm.
me at this time, and I'm sure at some point, as I think everybody gets to a point where when they do enough winning, I like to think that it clicks for me of okay, this is kind of where you win your matches, how you win your matches, and what makes you a problem for your opponents. And I'm not really there for Mickelson other than knowledge. Like I get the backhand is very very good, and I get the volleys are there, and the serve is big. So it's not that like I don't know what he's good at. I do. I just I don't feel good about projecting him right now. I don't
Okay.
feel like I have that handle on him.
Nor do I. That's why he fell this low.
Exactly. All right. I am going to take a guy who's kind of similar to Mickelson, except it's a lot more clearer, I guess, what he does out on the court. Hamad Majedovic.
Ooh, not on my board. That was an oversight by me. I like the pick.
Okay, yeah, obviously he's the next gen champion on an indoor hard court. It was striking last year. The conditions just didn't suit any of the young guys. It's just none of them were indoor hard court guys. Majedovic comes in, basically serves everybody off the court. So he's got a terrific serve. He's got a very, very big forehand. I don't think it's the most like it. It's great when he gets to set his feet. It's not the best when you get him moving, or even if he needs to run around it. Usually he just accepts backhand. So you can poke holes in the forehand. What he's got to get better at, the fitness needs to improve. The emotions on the court need to get, I think, a little bit more stable, because sometimes you watch him and you're like, this guy's awesome. He's so fired up. And then it's like, okay, well, now he's sulking because things haven't gone well for the last 5 minutes. So I think he needs to just tighten that up a bit. Maybe the backhand side also can get a little bit sharper. So there's a lot to improve, but I'm taking him for his serve and his forehand.
Don't hate the pick. Again, weapons at this point of the draft, so valuable. I'm going to take a guy with my next pick who has struggled this year, but was a guy entering the season I had right up there with Menchik and all the other guys who had either yet to make a top 100 debut or knocking on the door of it as prospects. I'll take Dino Prismic, the former, I believe, Junior French Open champion and 19-year-old from Croatia. I mean, mainstream. Did you see his 4-set match against Djokovic round one of Australia this year? That was an exciting moment, certainly, even if the context of Djokovic's season now makes that result make a lot more sense. Look, he's 12-13 overall this year. But it's what again, there were times last year, whether it was in the Davis Cup matches he played or at various times on his way to challenger titles, where like you see shades of 87% Alcaraz and 87% Alcaraz, even to see a shade of it, even to see a whiff of it, you're getting drafted at 11th in my board. The skill set is there. The explosiveness can be there. Now, again, hasn't been a great season for him this year. Still a teenager. I'm not selling my Prismic stock quite yet.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm into that. It's kind of
Last
funny
pick.
because I thought we'd be seeing more of him this year. Got to be honest.
Yeah.
After watching him
100%.
in Australia,
How high was that level in those first two sets? Crazy.
it was incredible. I mean, you wouldn't mistake him for a guy with big weapons even at that point. But the
Yeah.
combination of athleticism and really great trading from the baseline is it's almost like it reminded me of some of the old timey big three matches, in the sense like it got really physical for Novak there, and he didn't
Yeah.
necessarily want it to be getting that physical. Prismic made that happen. So I did think we'd be seeing more from him. All right, I believe we're on to pick number 12, right?
Final pick. This is the one, Gil.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Still
am
on the
going
board.
to
Darderi.
go with another
Navone.
guy whose
Nardi.
season has not been as good as I thought it was going to be, but I'm going to stick with him, and that's Luka Von Asche, who
Okay.
at a certain point I was like, why aren't you Schwartzman? You know,
Yeah,
uh,
sure.
he clearly knows who he is. He's got a lot of foot speed, and he looks to keep the ball in the court. His backhand is his better wing. He redirects well off the backhand. The forehand, there's not a ton of juice to it, but it's not as if he's uncomfortable, hitting it. The serve is probably bigger than Schwartzman's, if I can pay him that compliment. And he's had some success already. I want to say his career high is inside the top 50. So he's tasted that success at actually no, it's 63. But last pick, I go Van Asche.
Not a bad pick at all. My final pick, again, I'm going to stay on brand here. I got to cover him quite frequently throughout the course of his college career. And in fact, it wasn't Ben Shelton's final loss, but Ben Shelton being unable to beat this player in straight sets is part of the reason why Florida ended up losing in the quarterfinals in 2022. I'm going to take Chris Rodesh with my final pick. Rodesh, 23 years old out of Luxembourg, currently the world number 455 since leaving school in June. 29-6 here in 2024. Has made 5 different finals, 4 different titles at the 25 or 15K level. 6'5", fluid, big serve, big weapons off both wings. And for Chris, it's always been the better the opponent, the better the Rodesh you see. Again, to be the best player on a back-to-back national championship winning team, that sort of confidence you gain from that, you just can't fake that. And look, again, we've seen a lot of college players have come on the tour and have success right away. I would put Rodesh even more so than Fernley, even more so than a guy like Johannes Monday. There was Spaziri. There are a lot of good college guys that could turn to. Rodesh has always been my most upside pick over the last couple of
Bossavaretti,
seasons.
come on now.
I'd still go Rodesh over just because of the physicality Rodesh can bring. It's when, not if, in my opinion, Rodesh cracks the top 100 and just the size, the weapons, the fluidity he has. It's the physical profile of someone who goes higher as well. So I'll take him at this point.
All right. It wouldn't be right if we finished this podcast off without you drafting someone who I've never watched play.
I thought about taking Martin Landelus. I thought about taking Alex Block. Again, there's some Henry Serla thoughts snuck in there. If you've ever seen Buyan Chaukete play, his ball is as big as anyone in the world's.
He leads the Challenger Tour in wins this year. Boo.
Yeah, the Boo Man. Arthur Gee, Gabriel DeBrew. A lot of good people you could pick from. I'm going to stick with Rodesh. Winners win, and that's what Chris Rodesh has done anytime I've seen him.
That's a big endorsement, for the crop coming straight out of college. Yeah. Obviously, we go to your expertise on that. So okay, Rodesh of Luxembourg, the best player from Luxembourg since one Gilles Muller.
Yeah, very true. And again, you're talking to someone who tweeted out a comparison between Bossavaretti and Djokovic earlier this summer.
Dude, I get it though. I'm with you on that one. I've seen him play.
It's unbeliable.
He's got a great backhand. Very deep every time.
I'll take the physicality of Rodesh slightly over that. Slightly.
All right. Well, if we haven't lost all of our viewers and listeners in the last 5 or so minutes, Grusky, this has been incredible. I will store this in my Google Drive. It will always be here. Will it, embarrass one of us, both of us, neither of us? That is yet to be seen.
Can we put out a poll who won the draft? Because I think that's when we'll really know who the winner was today.
100%. Let's do it.
I love it. Thank you as always, my friend.
So there you have it. I end up with Mensik, Fonseca, Musetti, Kaboli, Pechi, Perikar, Lehechka, Kazo, Baez, Medjedovic, and Van Asha. Gruskin gets Draper, Runa, Shelton, Feast, Arnaldi, Shang, Nakashima, Tien, Diallo, Mickelson, and Prismic. Who had the better team? Feel free to weigh in the comment section. This show has been presented by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. Remember, if you sign up for BetUS, use promo code YouTube150. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.